Cleveland, James Cleveland, super famous. So she goes back to his church. And I mean, as a matter of fact, these 12-step programs, they often establish as a principle that, you cannot overcome your addiction unless you depend on a higher power.
Madhava's rock band.
The Madhava's rock band, they're huge in India.
Sometimes I'm missing the rock part. Anyway. So, hi everyone, and welcome, dear Chandrashekhara, to our show, to the Krishna West and Germany podcast. And we want to discuss today about Gospels in the tradition of the Christians and our Vaishnava tradition, some similarities, maybe some differences. And just to give our viewers a short introduction, you are from the academic field, you have an MA in religious studies in Oxford, and in the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, you are an official Bhakti Shastri teacher. And in the YouTube world, you have two channels, one in English and one in French. One is called Devotion Yoga, and the French one is, if I get it right, Les Hommes Libres.
Very good.
Okay, so welcome, Chandrashekhara.
Thank you.
And our inspiration to do this podcast today is that you, a couple of days ago, you sent me one movie, a new movie, about the life of the famous gospel singer Aretha Franklin. So I watched that, and I must say it was very impressive. And I started to compare what are the similarities in our tradition of Vaishnavism. So that would be my first question to you. Are there similarities? Because after all, it is said that in our scriptures, it is said that in this age of Kali, the Kali Yuga, the main or the most effective way to get an access to God, it is said, is the Sankirtana Yajna, the congregational praising of Lord's name. And it is more or less nothing else what they do there. Am I right?
I would agree. I mean, they're at the end of the day, Christianity is, I think, a theistic tradition. If it was like a Zen Buddhist gathering, with all due respect to Zen Buddhists, but if it was a Zen Buddhist gathering and they all like chanted different mantras, it would look similar, but the substance of it would be, really different. The goal would be very different. The philosophical underpinning would be really different. But here, at the end of the day, the Christians, I claim, are theists. They believe in one God, and they believe in a relationship. I mean, you hear so much about, having a personal relationship with Christ, especially in the Protestant, Christian rhetoric. So if the paradigm itself is clearly theistic, these sort of songs that gospel singers sing, where a clear relationship with God as a supreme being is, as a premise, I think by definition, Krishna must be manifesting himself in those sanghas, in those gatherings, in those quote unquote Christian kirtans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. You also told me that is also the content of that movie, is that Aretha Franklin, in her childhood, she was raised as the girl of a pastor, and then, of course, in every religious function, she was present, and they found out that she was a very, very talented singer, even in her very early age. And they invited her often to the stage of that church, and she was singing, and everyone was very moved. But then later, maybe you can tell us how the story goes further. Somehow she deviated from that path of singing for God. Can we say like that?
It's interesting. You see the sort of same dynamic in the Christian music world. And I haven't done a study on, I haven't even done much of a study on the gospel phenomena, but it's pretty obvious when you look at it, and it's so recent. But even I would say in the early Catholic, musical field, like Mozart, etc., Handel, Baroque music, the question always comes up, what is religious and what is entertainment, and where do you draw the line? Where do you go from, where do you step aboard, or where do you step beyond the accepted line? When does religious music become entertainment, right? And showbiz. You have that in the life of Ray Charles. I remember there was a movie on him, and the same thing, like he grows up, playing music that's religious in nature, and then, he goes to Hollywood, so to speak, and same thing with Aretha Franklin. The movie doesn't speak so much about what exactly were the exact causes, but the fact is she kind of moves out of that Christian small insulated world and goes on the quote, Hollywood, I'm not saying Hollywood geographically, but on the Hollywood sort of arena, the showbiz arena, and no longer sings about God, but sings more about love and relationships and broken hearts, and demanding respect from one's loved one, or feeling like a natural woman, and so on and so on. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And somehow that movie showed that she also lost the deep connection to her spiritual level. Yeah. And that caused that she had many relationship problems. She indulged into alcohol and stuff. And then there is a very interesting game changer. She realized that, hey, we can say when she was literally laying with her head on the ground,
with her bottle of vodka next to her.
Yeah, exactly. She somehow realized this cannot go on like this anymore. I have reached the
depth.
What?
The depth, or the bottom, the pit.
Yeah. So she somehow realized that something has to happen. And there, as we know, especially for alcoholics, there is this 12-step program, I think it is called. And that was also on discussion. Should she do something like that?
Well, apparently she did. In that scene that you're going to show, she's already in a program, but that's not enough for her, because she wants to reconnect with God in a deeper way, and how? Well, by making an album. Her 20th, or like her number 9 or number 10, 11, after having made so many albums which are quote unquote profane, quote unquote non-religious, quote unquote karmi. She made some karmi records, and now she wants to make a devotional record again. Or not again, really, for the first time.
Exactly. Maybe we should just have a glimpse into that scene.
Yeah, this scene is your favorite and my favorite. I think this is the scene we should tell our audience. This is like the like you say, the game changer scene, or the scene where she just decides, what, enough is enough. Maya, I rebuke you. The devil, I rebuke the devil in you. So it's like, Maya, I don't want any more Maya. I'm back with God. I just want to sing for God. I want to, make an album for God. And she tries to convince her producer about it.
Okay. You can make your comments that just go into that scene. we hope that YouTube will not.
This is the picture of one of the most famous. He was a pastor as well, the Reverend, I forget his name, and he was very
Cleveland, James Cleveland.
Frank, yeah, James Cleveland, super famous. So she goes back to his church and she's like, okay, let's. She asks him, okay, what do you want to sing? And and now she's with the producer.
I put the volume up that hopefully we can hear everything. And you can give your comments. So what is the scene here? Maybe you can explain.
This is the office of her Jewish producer, who's always been a well-wisher and who helped her become the huge star that she is by 1972.
Mm-hmm. Interestingly, he is an atheist, as far as I remember. He is not religious, but he is all in all, at least in this movie, he comes across as a decent, kind person.
Yeah.
Check it.
Has a very limited audience.
I don't care.
You do care. You sat in that office with me 6 years ago and you said you wanted to make hits, and I think you still do.
I'm making this album, Jerry.
All right, can you just hear me out, please?
I'm making this album, or I'll never make an album with you again. All I want to do is drink now, Jerry.
Well, let me get you into a program.
I'm in a program, but I need the church. I need the spirit.
Stop. It's nice, but I'm in a program, but I need the church. I need the spirit, which is kind of what we would say. I need Paramatma. I need the help of the Vaishnavas. I need Krishna's strength. And I mean, as a matter of fact, these 12-step programs, they often establish as a principle that, you cannot overcome your addiction unless you depend on a higher power, right? So here we're talking about the Holy Spirit in the Christian Protestant context. And so she's like, it's not enough. I need the Spirit. I need the church. I need so I need Sangha. I need Krishna's strength, we would say, equivalent. And then she makes her offering. I want to make this album. And I love this line. This is my favorite line in the whole movie. And the next line that you're going to show here, where she tells the producer, I'm not making this, because he's like, well, you're not going to make any money with this. This is not going to become a popular album. Like, no one wants to hear gospel, or very few people, and you've made these hits, which are, and this brings up an interesting point. Like, devotees want to become rock stars, and not in the bad sense, but they want to become very famous. But the thing, the nature of religious music in the material world is that the more religious music is, the less audience there is, by the very nature of this place. We believe on theological grounds that this place is a place where souls have come to reject God. And so therefore it follows logically that any art or literature or music or any expression of emotion directed towards God, the very person that everybody here rejected, will not bring many fans, Now, the Christians have an advantage, Paramshrayaji, and that is that they have 2,000 years of an audience already built, And so their job is to try to get, not so serious Christians to become more serious again, right? Or they're still trying to make non-Christians or atheists turn into Christians. But in other words, they have a very, very large warm audience, not a cold audience where like people don't know you at all, and they already have a huge warm audience, but they also have a huge lukewarm audience who are Christians by civilization, or by parents or by grandparents, whereas we, the devotees of Krishna in India, and it's interesting because you see, like, if I may, in India you see there's a few groups. There's like the group called the Madhavas. And they're huge.
Madhava's rock band.
The Madhava's rock band. They're huge in India.
Sometimes I'm missing the rock part. Anyway.
So, but they're huge. Why? Because there's a very, very, very large lukewarm, or if not warm, audience already to find fans in. Whereas we find ourselves, when I say we, I'm talking about Vaishnavas outside of India, with the task of building from scratch, basically, an entire audience, an entire generations, plural, of people who want to hear stuff about Krishna. And so right now, historically speaking, we find ourselves in a time where the greater audience of aficionados of Krishna music outside of India is tiny, 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 tiny. And so therefore we can't really expect to, if Christians already have a hard time finding an audience on the, the world market, what to speak of devotees of Krishna, But anyway, sorry, I went on a little tangent here.
It's a very interesting point. Although sometimes, you may agree, sometimes even an artist is having surprisingly success with a spiritual pop song. For instance, George Harrison comes into my mind with his My Sweet Lord. I think it is his most successful song.
But who else besides George Harrison? I mean, remember, George Harrison is also, because we use George Harrison as an example, and we use the argument. I mean, for example, we say, sorry to bring up the clothes issue, but this is just to make a bridge. We claim that, in the 1960s in America, everything freaky and outlandish and exotic was in. Right. And therefore, devotees coming on the stage with their Indian clothes was just like, wow, okay, cool, something totally different, freaky. Let's check it out. So similarly, I think music also, you see in the 60s a certain trend, well, certainly among the Beatles, to look into Asian religions in terms of musical inspiration. Mm-hmm. But ever since George Harrison, and I'm not putting down George Harrison, it's wonderful what he did, But since George Harrison, is there or are there significant musical musicians or music artists in the West who have become really famous for songs that are even remotely related to Krishna?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have George. What is it, George? Boy
George, bow down,
George.
Mister.
Bow down, Mister.
Bow down, Mister. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna. Okay, yeah. On the other hand,
At Shelter, of course.
Shelter, yes. On the other hand, as we see now, let's finish this sequence here.
Okay.
Interestingly still is that Aretha Franklin's gospel album that she then produces against the desire of her producer in the beginning became her most famous album, or as far as I know, the most successful gospel album ever.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's so cool. That itself, it's just like, it's just like Krishna saying, okay, you want to do something for me? Then I'll reward you. And everybody's saying this album's not going to be popular. Just wait. I'm going to make this album your most popular album in your entire career. I think she produced like 20 albums or something in that ballpark. And her career spanned from, the late 60s all the way to, she was still singing, there was that beautiful song that came out maybe 10 years ago, Never Break My Faith. She sang for Barack Obama's inauguration. So her career spanned over five decades. And of all her albums, that one, which she explicitly says, as we'll get to this clip here, I'm not making this album for you. I'm not making this album for me. I'm not making this album for anybody. I'm making this album for God. How beautiful is that?
Let's check out the sequence. So this
is put up the volume.
Let's see. This is her husband. I think it was her tour guide.
Yeah.
Can we just think about this?
This album is not for me or for you or anybody else. This album is for God. And you can't jive God, Jerry. So stop.
Can't jive God.
Or Jesus. Okay? It's the gospel record. 1972, for Christ's sake.
That was funny, for Christ's sake.
Right. Documentary film to go along with the record.
Why?
So the international fans, the hippies, the atheists like me can see you in your element and understand the music that made you.
You mean for white people?
Why? All right. Yes.
That's a great idea.
Okay. Well, good. So you're not going to leave me.
We're not done yet.
Oh, boy. What?
Okay, so now the thing moves on to
Album
Okay,
two.
okay.
which musicians she wants and stuff. But
Okay. Yeah, interestingly, Chandrasekhar, when I then heard that there is even a recording, not only a audio recording of that album, which obviously became that album, there's also a film recording. And interestingly, well, let's give it a earlier start. They decided to film this session in that church where that gospel recording took place. She did not, interestingly, wanted a studio. As we know from musicians, they like to make their album in studios, but she wanted to record that session in a church with that natural surrounding, people, believers, do you call it them? I think
believers, the
faithful, and they came into the church, although it was not restricted to everybody could join.
But it's interesting that that pastor, what's his name again? The musical arrangement genius,
James Cleveland.
So James Cleveland, remember, it's noteworthy. At the beginning of the recording, he says, "Okay, everybody, we're recording this. We're recording the audio. We're filming it. But remember, this is a church. Remember, this is a religious service." And it's important, and that can again we have Janavi and the Gauravani and but like you have bigger artists who are not in the ISKCON world like Krishna Das, Jai Uttal, they're MC Yogi. So assuming these gentlemen are devout Vaishnavas, just assuming, okay, and maybe they are, but assuming they are. Then they ask, the same question arises, and we hear that, even, devotees are criticized, why do you charge for your kirtans? Like when the kirtaniyas come into town, or when Gauravani goes on a preaching tour, or the Mayapuris or Janavi, regular rank and file devotees have to pay money in order to attend. And so the argument is, well, hey, wait a second, kirtans should be free, and similarly, like church music should be free. So it's interesting, and I don't think there's a hard and fast black and white distinction, because even there, for example, in the context of ISKCON, there's some statements of Prabhupada. I remember where he says you should charge, you should charge for programs, because if people don't pay, they won't appreciate it. So. It's a complex issue, an interesting issue.
Okay. At least the charge should be affordable. It should not be a crazy price like you pay when you go to a Rolling Stones concert. I've heard 150 euros or so. But anyway, let's what I think is very interesting is that she chose that church for her recording, and it was important for her to create this atmosphere that she was used in her childhood. And when I heard that there is a film recording, I also heard that this film recording was forbidden to show for practically 50 years. Wow. It was in the drawer, locked in the drawer. Drawer. Thank you. And some film producers tried to display that in the cinema, and all the time they were sued by Aretha Franklin to not do that.
Interesting.
So it seems that the exact reasons are unknown, but we can speculate. Maybe one reason is that she really thought we did that recording, it was for God, as she explained in that sequence, and we don't want to maybe show more, put ourselves more than necessary into the center. That might be one answer. So, but then after her death, her family said, okay, you can now display that.
Now we can make some money on it. No, I'm kidding.
I don't know, but
no, I'm just joking.
It might.
I mean, the consideration must have come also. I mean, money was made on that. But anyway.
But maybe they just thought, now we can build her the samadhi she deserves, and let's show the world this recording. And I was really blown away.
Now you cried, you told me, huh? You had tears in your eyes when you saw it.
I really cried. I watched it now 2 times. And that leads us to another topic. What I found so impressive in this gospel culture, especially by the Black people, is that they were so, they could sing with so much, I think the word is ardor,
yeah.
Ardor, and with so much emotion that they sometimes really, come into an ecstatic state. That I found very impressive. And when I compare that, we have also a local church here in my town, and maybe twice a year I go there, and everything is so stiff, especially in Germany. The church functions are super stiff. Everyone is very, straight. And so what do you think? Is there, do Black people have a special access to get into this emotional state? And the second one, is this just the mentality, or is it maybe, is the reason also that, for instance, in the USA, you are from California, and there was the South Californian choir singing. We know that Black people had this horrific history in USA of slavery, and there were for so many hundreds of years in that desperate situation. Is that maybe something that helped them to with more intensity to approach God and the process of praising God and praising His name?
Yeah, that could be. I mean, we do have in the first canto, we have in the first canto we have Queen Kunti saying that that you are approachable by those who are materially exhausted. And that's one point that comes to mind.
Akinchana Gochara, I think.
That's it. And the other thing that comes to mind is just language, is linguistics. Now, you notice, like, for example, when I was, where was I? I was at the Kirtan Mela in New Mayapur last month, and there's this Bangladeshi devotee, Neil is his name, and he's a Bangladeshi immigrant to France. He's been in France for about 10 years, and he loves Kirtan. And very simple gentleman. And at one point, Agnidev Prabhu was singing a Bengali song by Bhaktivinoda Thakur or Narottam. And while he was singing, I could see that that this Neil was reciting, was like understanding what classical Bengali was. He was singing the song like you and I would sing German, or like you and I would sing, in English. And I felt, and I told him, you're so lucky that you know this. You're so lucky that you understand the language that you're singing. And I think and I'll tell you, I'll have a personal experience. Like, about 10 years ago, I went to spend the weekend. I went to spend the weekend at a temple, which is not an ISKCON temple. It's a temple by some sannyasi who actually from German origin, a Prabhupada disciple who, anyway, it's called the Vrinda Mission. And so he, please go ahead. As long as, they have a policy in this mat to sing the morning program in local language, right? They have a policy that they think it's theologically justifiable and actually favorable, and they should do it. So this temple was in a Hispanic neighborhood of Miami, where everybody speaks Spanish. And I also grew up in Mexico, and I had a Mexican nanny, and I studied Spanish in school, and I lived in Los Angeles, where there's so many Mexicans, and so long story short, I'm fluent in Spanish. And so for the first time, after maybe this must have been about 5-10 years ago, so for the first time after 20 years of singing, Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Nama, or Shiguru Charana Padma, or Samsara Dava, all of a sudden I sang those songs in Spanish. I sang them in Spanish, and I was like, oh my God, like it felt weird, and at the same time it felt exciting to be able to sing with feeling in my natural language. There's a big difference to say, for example, Aha Prabhu Korodoya Dehamore Padachaya. You don't know what that means. I mean, because you know the translation. And to sing, for example, I'm just speculating, but to sing, oh Master, please give me the shelter of your lotus feet. There's a big difference. And so that brings up the discussion on, which again has also been already tackled in the Catholic Church, for example, or in the Christian world. Like, do we do our liturgy in Latin, or do we do it in local German? Like today, I'm in Vienna, and I went to the cathedral this morning, and I happened to walk in just during the morning mass. So I sat down, and the priest was speaking in German, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. So similarly, I assume that in the future, some ISKCON branches will prefer to do their liturgy in standard Sanskrit and classical Bengali, and others, I assume, and I hope, because again, the more, like Hriday Nanamar says, the more items on the menu in a restaurant, the more customers you get. The more flavors of the same recipe or the same food, the more eaters. So similarly, I hope that maybe one day we'll see some branches of ISKCON singing the morning programs and evening programs, in local Zulu, or in local Spanish, or in local Armenian, or in local, Mandarin, and so on.
But then there is the danger that, for instance, you are a globetrotter, as far as I know. You travel the world quite often, that when you come to South Africa, you mentioned the Zulu language, and suddenly you find yourself in a temple where the songs are sang in Zulu. It
won't make much of a difference, will it? Because I already know the translation, and whether I'm singing, Shiguru Charana Padma, or I'm singing along with a songbook about the Zulu language, I'm still singing the same thing. Okay. And furthermore, I can just wait till we get to the Kirtan part, and we just chant Hare Krishna. So I don't think it's such a big problem. And I don't think there's many globetrotters in the world anyway. So for most people, they stay stationary in one country. And so I don't think this issue comes up that much, in my humble opinion.
But you're right. What is really important, I have here a German songbook.
Wow.
And there was once a devotee called Raja Vidya Prabhu. He very, very, very professionally put all the Sanskrit words into German word by word translation.
And you can sing those?
It is in Sanskrit and in Bengali, but he put very much effort in really translating every word into German, and it helped me really a lot to, when you sing Shri Guru Charana Padma, to remember, okay, Charana Charana Padma are the lotus feet. Padma is the lotus, and Charana is, let me take shelter on his feet, lotus feet. So what you say is totally right. When the more we understand what we are singing, the more we can get that access. And maybe at the end of our show, we can also have a glimpse into a traditional gospel song and a Vaishnava song, and see that this is this desperate longing for the Lord's mercy that we find in both cultures. And I thought on the Christian side, I found that song Amazing Grace, which is maybe one of the most famous gospel songs. And I ask you, do you have something similar in the Vaishnava culture? And then you came up with what song?
Gopinath by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. At least there's one part where, Aretha Franklin, not Aretha, in the song Amazing Grace, she says, the Amazing Grace has saved such a wretch as me. And so in a similar way with Gopinath, you have this mood of feeling very fallen and wretched, and reaching out to the Lord and asking for the Lord's mercy.
I have this song here by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and let's see where that exact line is.
I think at the end, you are an ocean of mercy.
Number 8.
I'm so sinful.
Please go ahead. Please read 7 and 8, or let's say why not read the whole song?
Gopinath, O Lord of the Gopis, please hear my request. I'm a wicked materialist. I'm a wretch. Same thing. I'm a wicked materialist, always addicted to worldly desires, and no good qualities do I possess. O Gopinath, you are my only hope, and therefore I have taken shelter at your lotus feet. I am now your eternal servant. O Gopinath, how will you purify me? I do not know what devotion is, and my materialistic mind is absorbed in fruitive work. I have fallen into this dark and perilous worldly existence. O Gopinath, everything here is your illusory energy. I have no strength or transcendental knowledge, and this body of mine is not independent nor free from the control of material nature. O Gopinath, this sinner who is weeping and weeping begs for an eternal place at your divine feet. Please give him your mercy. O Gopinath, you are able to do anything, and therefore you have the power to deliver all sinners. Who is there that is more of a sinner than myself? O Gopinath, you are the ocean of mercy. Having come into this phenomenal world, you expand your divine pastimes for the sake of the fallen souls. O Gopinath, I am so sinful that although all the demons attained your lotus feet, Bhaktivinoda has remained in worldly existence.
Wow. And maybe just to make that comparison, let's check out Amazing Grace.
It's interesting. While you're looking, I'll just make a comment. Like Amazing Grace is a song where the devotee has already felt like he's already or she gotten already a drop of mercy and is glorifying the Lord for having been so merciful. Whereas Gopinath is like just before getting the mercy, asking for the mercy. Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved the right. It's interesting how sweet the sound. Again, this notion of the holy name, how Krishna or God is present in his sound. And so I find it interesting here that you have this notion of sound. It's a sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I am found. I was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and a very Christian notion of fearing God, right? Which is also healthy. I mean, Prabhupada said, right, the problem with you is you're not afraid of Maya enough. And grace, my fears relieved. How precious. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. Interesting. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares I have already come. 'Tis grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. The Lord has promised good to me, his word my hopes secures. He will my shield and portion be as long as life endures. Yeah, when this flesh and heart shall fall, when I die, and mortal life shall cease, I shall possess within the veil a life of joy and peace. Within the veil, on the other side of the curtain of Maya, we could say, the curtain of Maya that Queen Kunti talks about, on the other side of sense perception, on the side of the life of the soul, which is Satchit Ananda, peace and joy. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as a sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we're first begun.
That spontaneously another Vaishnava song came into my mind. Let's check this also out. It is the song Bhaja Hure Mana, where you spoke about the danger, right?
Oh, our life is like tottering on like a drop on a leaf of a lotus, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Let's check out this.
Didn't Prabhupada say, or didn't I heard someone say that was his favorite? Like, what's her name? Who sang Govinda Madi Purusham? Yamuna. She asked Prabhupada, what's your favorite bhajan? Or he told her that this is her favorite. Did you ever hear that? That this Bhaja Hure is his favorite bhajan?
Yeah, but I also heard that it is Vipale.
Oh, that's the one, right? Vipale. You have it right there. Why don't you click on it, my friend?
Yes.
The Radha Krishna temple, you had it.
No, that was just Bengali.
Oh, you see? It proves our point. If the problem of language.
Okay, wait. We will find it, I am pretty sure. Maybe.
Yeah, bottom. Bhaja Hure Mana Shri Nandana. Below that. Below that. Yeah, that's an ISKCON Desire Tree link. I'm sure we'll find it there.
Okay. So here are the lyrics in Bengali. You're right. Maybe you can also give us.
Oh my mind, just worship the lotus feet of the son of Nanda, which makes one fearless. Having obtained...
There you have it, with the feet.
Right, fearless. Yeah, exactly. Very good point. Having obtained this rare human birth, cross over this ocean of worldly existence. So yeah, this idea of going there, we found that in Amazing Grace, going to the other side. Of course, there's not much notion of reincarnation in Christianity, but in their next life. No, I'm just kidding. It's a joke. Having obtained this human birth, cross over this ocean of worldly existence through the association of saintly persons. You have Aretha saying, I need the church. So that's, the association of saintly persons.
Right.
Both in the day and night I remain sleepless, suffering the pains of the heat and cold, the wind and the rain. For a fraction of flickering happiness I have uselessly served wicked and miserly men. What assurance of real happiness is there in all one's wealth, youthfulness, sons and family members? This life is tottering like a drop of water on a lotus petal. Therefore you should always serve and worship the divine feet of Lord Hari. It is the desire and great longing of Govinda Das to engage himself in the 9 processes of bhakti. Hearing the glories, chanting those glories, remembering the Lord always, offering prayers, serving the Lord's lotus feet, serving the Lord as a servant, worshiping him with flowers and incense, serving him as a friend, and completely offering the Lord one's very life.
Wow.
Bhakti, it's bhakti. So there's
pretty gospel-like. In that concert of Aretha Franklin, there's one song, I think one of the first one is, Jesus is your best friend.
I was just thinking, yeah, best friend, you've got a friend in Jesus, and Krishna says, I'm the Suridam Sarvabhutanam, right? Yeah, bhakti, my sort of, I come to this realization often, Param Shri Prabhu, is that, okay, like we as devotees of Krishna believe, at least I do, that, the theology of the Bhagavatam is objectively more sophisticated and more precise, not only about God, but about even this worldly existence than the Bible, with all due respect, okay? But just as in our tradition, the goal is not, knowledge, the goal is bhakti, devotion towards God. the fact that the essence of theistic traditions is bhakti is the proof or the explanation why in other traditions where perhaps the theology is not as sophisticated as the Bhagavad school, you still find these amazing expressions of bhakti. And the analogy I like to use is, you know how sometimes you walk on a sidewalk and through the cracks of a sidewalk, you see some sprouts of grass or some little, plants that somehow make their way through the concrete. Mm-hmm. And so, like we believe, the conclusion of, I wrote a paper at Oxford about Christian vegetarianism. And my conclusion was like, look, if Christians are really serious about being vegetarian, they would just have a lot easier time. It would be a lot easier for them to use the Bhagavad-gita and the Bhagavatam as sources of scriptural references to justify their point than the Bible, which, aside from some statements in the Old Testament, is just fraught with statements that are pro-eating meat, Mm-hmm. So these creepers are able to make it through this concrete, right, to get that sunlight to grow. So similarly, you may have an imperfect or less sophisticated theological framework, where, for example, you don't believe in reincarnation, which I think is it's a pretty big handicap, but still, nonetheless, even if you don't believe in reincarnation or even whatever, your theological framework is not as sophisticated as the Bhagavatam, because devotion, we believe, is the inherent essence of each soul. Mm-hmm. Souls are able to express devotion in spite of having less than perfect or unsophisticated or even sometimes, theological frameworks that almost act as obstacles to their bhakti. Still, they're able to express bhakti. And so for me, these songs sung by gospel singers or these great creations by Mozart or Handel are testimony that bhakti is so strong, it's so powerful, and it's so inherent in the soul that nothing can stop it. Nothing can stop expressing a longing to love God and a desire to be loved by God.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, regarding expression, the emotional, spiritual expression, a couple of days ago, I heard one person in my tradition speaking critical about Christian gospel culture, something that often it becomes a show. Sometimes we can switch on the television on Sunday and see these American
okay, but then we could say the same thing. Sorry to interrupt, but we could say the same thing. Sometimes you go to the Kirtan melas and blah blah blah, and then you have you already have this culture of, the famous Kirtaniyas, and now let's give a round of applause for, Johnny Harrison or for Vishwambar. And I'm not, putting down these devotees; they're very sincere, but we see that also. So I would tell that devotee, you don't think there's, the bhava of name and fame and recognition and sort of like let's play the mridanga, showing our beautiful tattoos and really impress the woman, or vice versa. That's not present in our. It's present anywhere where devotees of God, regardless of their tradition, are still somewhat materialistic, right? It's just it's universal. It's not that just Christians, suffer from the temptations or the pitfall of singing for name and fame or for money. Same thing, it happens in any religious community. No, don't you think that's a good counter argument?
Yeah, that is always a challenge to stay humble, and although one has maybe this gifted talent of singing or playing beautiful music. But what I was aiming for is that the criticism was that sometimes we see these functions and they go a little bit, or sometimes very much, over the top with their spiritual emotions. Even in the audience, someone is fainting and or someone is crying, and you wonder, is this real or is this show? Is this fake?
But the nectar, Rupa Goswami talks about shadow attachment also. Prabhupada talks about it in the Nectar of Devotion, shadow attachment, right? So when you go to a kirtan mela and you see devotees, crying, how do we know? How is it just shadow attachment, or is it really sincere, or is it some mixture of both? And so instead of pointing fingers to others and trying to figure out, what is their motivation? Are they really crying or are they not? Perhaps we should just be more introspective about it. What did Bhaktisiddhanta say? Sarasvati Thakur, instead of, looking into the weaknesses of others, you should look into your own heart first.
Right. So we call that tendency, if that is not real, we call it Sahajianism in our tradition, that we show purposefully religious or spiritual feelings just to impress others, impress the public. And that was also my answer, that this danger or this tendency is there in all spiritual traditions. I guess even in the Sufi tradition or in the Judaism tradition, there are similar cases where we can ask, is he or she now going over the top purposefully just to get some impression? So, yeah.
Right.
But on the other hand, and that is my point, is I think there are two extremes. One extreme is that we don't show any emotion when we engage in our spiritual practice, especially in this praising or kirtan culture, this chanting culture. And the other extreme is that we purposefully go over the top. So,
I agree.
Yeah. So that was also my answer, that this is not reduced to one particular tradition. It is a universal danger that we face everywhere. So it is not, so the mistake is not in the tradition, but it is in when there is a mistake, it is the mistake of the particular practitioner.
Right.
Okay.
I agree.
Yeah, thank you very much, dear Chandrasekhara, for this interesting talk about the comparison of gospel, Christian gospel culture and traditional Vaishnava Kirtan culture. I found that very interesting, and you sparked something in me when you hint towards that movie on Aretha Franklin's life.
When I saw it, I was like, Param Shari, you got to watch this movie. You got to watch this movie.
Yeah, exactly. I think that should be the natural way of preaching. We sometimes use this word preaching, and it sounds a little bit awkward for many people. But actually, I think this should be how preaching works, that we show our natural enthusiasm for some spiritual item, and we are so eager to see that others are also experiencing that happiness or that ecstasy. And just by when I saw your enthusiasm, your natural enthusiasm, and that desire, hey, Param Shari, you should also get that experience, I was immediately inclined to check this out. So in my car now, since 4 days uninterruptedly, this gospel album is playing. Yeah. And yeah. Okay. So thank you. And
Pleasure.
What is, maybe to our YouTube audience, what are your thoughts about Christian gospel culture compared to Vaishnava Kirtan tradition? Please make your comment in the comment section. I am pretty interested in knowing what do you think about it. And again, Chandrasekhar also has 2 very interesting YouTube channels you should not miss. One is called Devotion Yoga or Yoga Devotion. And that is his English speaking channel. And if you are a French person, then check out, let me see if I get it right, Les âmes libres. Okay, so in the video box, in the info box, you will get the exact link to his channels. Thank you, Chandrasekhar. I wish you a nice week and then see you later.
Thank you. Jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Bajahure mana srinandana abhacharanara vindure durlabhamanava janama satsange